Listen closely. The fact that these words have entered your ear right now is not a coincidence, it is a sign. If you have found yourself here in this precise moment, it is because something profound has shifted within you. Perhaps you no longer recognize yourself. Perhaps the person who once felt everything so deeply now feels almost nothing at all. Perhaps you have noticed that the doors of your heart, once flung wide open to the world, have quietly, irrevocably closed. What I am about to share with you may disturb you. It may also liberate you. There exists a psychological metamorphosis so complete, so total in its transformation, that even those who experience it cannot fully comprehend what has occurred within them. It is the moment when the one who gave endlessly, who absorbed the pain of others as though it were their own sacred duty, undergoes a fundamental restructuring of the psyche and emerges as someone entirely different, not broken, not defeated, but fundamentally altered. You were the one who stayed up until 3 in the morning listening to another's crisis. You were the one who felt the emotional weather of every room you entered. You were the one who gave your energy, your time, your very essence to those who needed it, and you did so because something deep within your soul told you this was your purpose: to heal, to hold, to help. But something has changed, has it not? The universe does not transform an empath into an avoidant without reason. This is not punishment, this is not failure. This is a necessary death and rebirth that occurs when the psyche can no longer sustain the structure it has been operating under. Your soul, in its infinite wisdom, has recognized that the pattern you were living was leading you toward total annihilation, and so it has initiated the great withdrawal. The first sign occurs not in your thou, 'tis but in your physical vessel. Your body, which is far wiser than the conscious mind, begins to reject the very thing you once believed defined you: emotional availability. You may have noticed this. Someone reaches out to you with their familiar pain, their recurring crisis, their desperate need for your presence, and something unprecedented occurs. Your chest tightens, your stomach turns. A wave of exhaustion moves through you so profound that you can barely stand. This is not illness, this is not weakness, this is your body's autonomy finally asserting itself after years of being overridden by your empathic compulsion. What most people do not realize is that empathy, when exercised without boundaries, without the necessary counterbalance of self-preservation, becomes a form of self-violence. The empath's body begins to store the accumulated pain of others in its very tissues. The nervous system, overstimulated by years of absorbing emotional frequencies it was never designed to carry, eventually stages a revolt. A woman who spent 15 years as the emotional anchor for her entire family suddenly develops severe migraines whenever her mother calls. A man who prided himself on being the friend everyone turned to begins experiencing panic attacks when his phone rings. These are not random symptoms. These are the body's desperate attempts to communicate what the conscious mind refuses to accept. This pattern is killing you. But here is what may shock you more. When you finally begin to honor these physical signals, when you stop answering the calls, when you create distance from those who have fed on your energy for years, you will be called selfish. You will be called cold. You will be told that you have changed and not for the better. This is the first test of your transformation. Will you return to the pattern that was destroying you simply to avoid being misunderstood? The body knows what the heart is too loyal to admit. When it finally refuses to participate in your own abandonment, listen to it. Where once you had open doors, you now have walls. Where once you had windows, you now have mirrors that reflect others back to themselves, rather than allowing them entry into your inner world. This armor does not appear overnight. It is built slowly, brick by brick, with each betrayal, each manipulation, each moment when your empathy was weaponized against you. The narcissist who learned exactly which wounds to press, the friend who only called when they needed something, the partner who mistook your depth for weakness and your openness for naivety. Each of these experiences contributed one more layer to the structure that now surrounds you. And perhaps you have noticed something disturbing about this armor. It is nearly impenetrable. Even those who approach you with genuine love, with authentic intention, cannot quite reach you anymore. You observe this from a distance, as though watching yourself through glass. Someone offers you kindness, and instead of receiving it with the warmth you once possessed, you analyze it. You search for the hidden motive. You wait for the inevitable disappointment. The psyche, unable to withstand further injury, creates a buffer between your authentic self and the external world. You are still empathic, the capacity has not disappeared, but you have learned to keep it contained, controlled, accessible only to yourself. You feel your own emotions with perhaps even greater intensity than before, but you no longer extend that feeling outward indiscriminately. This stage often brings with it profound guilt. The empath, now turned avoidant, looks at themselves and thinks, "I have become what I once feared. I have become cold. I have become unavailable. I have become the very person who would have hurt me." But this is a misunderstanding of the highest order. You have not become your abusers. You have become boundaried. There is a vast difference between the person who is avoidant because they lack the capacity for depth and the person who is avoidant because they have too much capacity and have finally learned they must protect it. You are the latter. The armor is not permanent, but it is necessary. It is the chrysalis within which your new form is taking shape. You, who once felt compassion for every wounded soul, every broken story, every person who crossed your path with pain in their eyes, have become impossibly selective about where you direct your emotional energy. This selectivity feels foreign to you, does it not? It feels almost cruel. But what is actually happening is the development of psychic discernment. Your soul has finally learned to distinguish between those who genuinely seek growth and those who seek only to drain, between those who will honor your depth and those who will exploit it, between those who want to truly know you and those who simply want to use you. Empaths often carry an unconscious savior complex. Deep within their psyche lives a belief that if they can just love someone enough, feel for them deeply enough, stay present through enough of their darkness, they can save that person from themselves. This belief is a beautiful testament to the empath's heart, but it is also a profound misunderstanding of how transformation actually occurs. You cannot save anyone. You can only create conditions in which someone might choose to save themselves. And most people, I'm sorry to say, and will not choose this. Most people will instead seek temporary relief through your emotional labor, drain you of your essence, and move on to the next available source when you finally collapse from exhaustion. The universe has taught you this lesson through repetition. How many times did you give your all to someone who changed just enough to keep you engaged, but never enough to actually heal? How many times did you sacrifice your peace to maintain someone else's comfort? How many times did you twist yourself into smaller and smaller shapes to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold someone of your depth? Now, you have stopped. You no longer rush toward every emotional fire with buckets of your own life force. You no longer feel obligated to absorb the suffering of those who refuse to do their own inner work. You no longer believe that your worth is measured by how much you can endure on behalf of others. This is not hardness. This is wisdom. This is the difference between the empathy of the unconscious and the empathy of the individuated. The former gives indiscriminately and destroys itself in the process. The latter gives consciously, from overflow rather than from depletion, and only to those who have demonstrated they will honor such a gift. If others call you cold now, it is only because they have confused your previous self-abandonment with love. They have mistaken your lack of boundaries for virtue. Now that you have reclaimed your sovereignty, they experience your wholeness as absence. This is their confusion, not your failure. There is a moment in every empath's transformation when something extraordinary occurs. The loneliness they once feared, the isolation they once fled from, suddenly becomes the most sacred space they have ever inhabited. Solitude, which once felt like exile, now feels like homecoming. You may have noticed this shift in yourself, where once you filled every silence with connection, with reaching out, with making yourself available, you now guard your solitude as though it were the most precious resource you possess, and you are correct to do so. It is. The empath who becomes avoidant is actually undergoing ego reconstruction. The old structure, the one built on the belief that your value comes from what you provide to others, has collapsed. In its place, a new structure is forming, one that understands that your value is inherent, not earned. But this new structure requires silence to build itself. It requires space untainted by the projections and demands of the external world. In solitude, you are remembering who you are beneath all the roles you played: the healer, the supporter, the emotional anchor. These were not false identities, but they were incomplete. They were the masks you wore to make your depth more palatable to a world that was uncomfortable with the fullness of your being. Now, alone, you are meeting your authentic self, perhaps for the first time. And this self is not as soft as you imagined. This self has edges. This self has limits. This self says no without explanation or apology. This self does not rush to fill uncomfortable silences. This self does not absorb the emotional state of every room it enters. This self chooses when to engage and when to withdraw. The person cannot become whole while constantly fragmenting themselves to meet the needs of others. They cannot hear their own soul's voice while listening to the endless demands of the collective. They cannot find their center while being pulled in every direction by those who have not yet found their own. Your solitude is not loneliness. It is reclamation. It is the sacred space within which you are gathering all the pieces of yourself you gave away over the years, examining them, cleansing them, and deciding which you will keep and which you will release. But the people from your past, those who benefited from your boundless availability, will sense your withdrawal and attempt to pull you back. They will not understand your need for solitude because they have never done the inner work that would make solitude valuable to them. They will call you distant. They will claim you have abandoned them. They will tell you that you were so much warmer, so much kinder, so much better before. What they mean is, you were so much easier to access. You were so much more willing to deplete yourself. You were so much more convenient when you had no boundaries. Do not return to the old pattern to ease their discomfort. Your transformation is not negotiable. Your solitude is not a phase. It is the cocoon within which something new is being born. Here is the paradox that most empaths turned avoidants do not expect. The very walls you built to protect yourself from further harm eventually become the foundation upon which genuine intimacy can finally be constructed. You may not feel ready for this yet, and that is perfectly appropriate. But understand something essential. The inversion you have undergone is not the end of your capacity for connection. It is the necessary death of connection based on depletion, so that connection based on mutual wholeness can eventually emerge. The empath who gives from emptiness creates symbiotic entanglement. They become fused with those they help, unable to distinguish where their emotions end and another's begin. This feels like deep connection, but it is actually a form of mutual imprisonment. Both parties become trapped in a dynamic where the empath's worth is contingent on the other's need, and the other's stability is contingent on the empath's sacrifice. This is not love. This is codependence, and the universe has freed you from it through the painful process of making such entanglement unbearable to your soul. Now, as the avoidant, you stand at a threshold. Behind you lies the pattern of self-abandonment disguised as empathy. Before you lies the possibility of sovereign intimacy. connection between two whole people who choose each other not from need but from genuine desire, not from wounds seeking healing but from fullness seeking to be shared. A man who once chased unavailable partners with his empathic intensity, trying to love them into wholeness, now finds himself alone but no longer lonely. He has learned that his depth is not a tool for fixing others, but a gift to be offered only to those who have done their own work. When he finally meets someone who has also individuated, who has also learned boundaries, who has also integrated their shadow, something new becomes possible. Not the desperate fusion of the wounded, but the conscious choice of the whole. A woman who spent years absorbing her family's dysfunction, serving as the emotional regulator for everyone around her, finally withdraws. She stops answering every call. She stops attending every gathering. She stops being the one everyone turns to. Her family calls her selfish. But in her solitude, she discovers as something profound. She actually likes herself, not the version of herself that performed endless emotional labor, but the self that exists when she is not performing at all. When she eventually opens her heart again, it is to people who love this authentic self, not the agreeable mask she wore for decades. This is what the inversion makes possible. Not the absence of love, but the right kind of love. Not the absence of connection, but connection that does not require you to disappear in order to maintain it. But not everyone will understand or accept the new you. Those who benefited from your old pattern will resist your transformation with everything they have. They will tell you that you were better before. They will claim you have lost your gift. They will suggest that your boundaries are a betrayal of who you truly are. They are wrong. Your boundaries are the truest expression of self-love you have ever embodied. Your selectivity is not coldness. It is wisdom. Your withdrawal is not abandonment, it is preservation. You have not lost your empathy. You have simply learned that empathy without boundaries is self-destruction, and self-destruction is not noble, it is tragic. The question now is this: will you honor this transformation, or will you allow guilt to pull you back into the pattern that nearly destroyed you? There comes a final stage in this transformation that most people do not anticipate. It is the moment when you realize you are no longer the empath you once were, but you are also not truly avoidant in the way that term implies. You have become something else entirely, something that transcends both categories. This state can only be called psychological integration. It is the moment when the pendulum, having swung from one extreme to the other, finally finds its center. In this integrated state, you still feel deeply. Your capacity for empathy has not diminished. If anything, it has intensified because it is no longer diluted across 100 unworthy recipients. But now, you feel with intention. You choose when to open and when to close. You decide who has earned access to your depth and who has not. You no longer mistake your sensitivity for obligation. The integrated empath understands something that the unconscious empath could never grasp. That the highest form of empathy is not the ability to feel everything for everyone, but the wisdom to know when feeling serves growth and when it enables dysfunction. That true compassion sometimes looks like letting people face the consequences of their own choices rather than cushioning every fall. That the most loving thing you can do is maintain your own wholeness so you can meet others from a place of overflow rather than depletion. This integration does not happen quickly. For some it takes years, for others a lifetime. The process cannot be rushed. You cannot force yourself back into availability before you are ready, just as you cannot remain walled off forever if genuine growth is to occur. What can be observed is this: the empath who has been hurt too many times. As and transforms into the avoidant is not broken. They are in chrysalis. The isolation, the walls, the refusal to engage, these are not permanent states but necessary passages. Within the apparent hardness of avoidance, something soft and new is being protected while it grows strong enough to exist in the world without being destroyed by it. You are not becoming cold. You are becoming conscious. You are not losing your gift. You are learning to steward it properly. You are not abandoning others. You are finally, after all this time, refusing to abandon yourself. Let me tell you something that may bring you peace. The pain you have endured, the betrayals that forced you to withdraw, the disappointments that taught you to protect yourself, none of this was random. The universe orchestrates these experiences not to break you, but to break you open, to shatter the false structures you were living within so that something true could finally emerge. You were not supposed to remain the empath who gives without boundaries forever. That version of you was a developmental stage, not a destination. It was necessary for you to experience the fullness of that role so you could eventually transcend it. You could not learn discernment without first practicing indiscriminate compassion. You could not develop healthy boundaries without first experiencing the devastation of having none. The empath's inversion is not a mistake. It is a metamorphosis. And here is what most people will never tell you. You are stronger now than you have ever been. Not the brittle strength that resists all vulnerability, but the flexible power that knows when to open and when to protect. Not the naive strength that believes everyone deserves your energy, but the wise strength that understands some people will drain you dry and call it love. You have learned something that takes most people a lifetime to understand, if they ever understand it at all. That you cannot pour from an empty cup, but more importantly, that you are not obligated to pour at all simply because someone is thirsty. That your empathy is a gift to be offered consciously, not a resource to be extracted. That the people who truly love you will honor your boundaries, and those who don't were never loving you. They were using you. Perhaps you have noticed that you no longer fear being alone. Perhaps you have realized that the solitude you once dreaded is now the space where you feel most yourself. Perhaps you have discovered that you prefer your own company to the exhausting performance of being endlessly available. This is not damage. This is awakening. The empath who becomes avoidant after being hurt too many times is not giving up on humanity. They are giving up on being humanity's emotional dumping ground. They are not closing their heart. They are finally, after years of leaving it unguarded in unsafe hands, learning to protect it. And when the time comes, and it will come, when you meet someone who has also done this work, who has also built their boundaries, who has also learned to honor their own depths, you will discover that connection is possible again, not the depleting fusion you once called love, but something better, something mutual, something that honors your wholeness rather than demanding your fragmentation. Until then, be patient with yourself, honor the walls you have built, trust the process you are undergoing. You are not broken, you are not lost, you are not cold. You are simply becoming who you were always meant to be. An empath who finally learned that the first person worthy of your empathy is yourself. The question is not whether you will love again. The question is whether you will finally love yourself enough to never again accept relationships that require you to disappear in order to exist.